Well, thank you for joining us, Brad. I know you're a busy guy. If you're not in the city, you're up in the mountains or out on a road somewhere. But somehow you made it into an office to talk to us. So first of all, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here, Michael. It's a pleasure.
Well, some people may know you and some people may not. So could you give us kind of just a very basically who you are and how you wound up in Japan?
Okay, my name's Brad Bennett, and I operate a bicycle tour company here called Freewheeling. And I started the company about 5 years ago. And it's when I came to Japan, though, I was riding bicycles, and that was my main sort of activity. I'm from the Northwest in the United States, from the Seattle area. And I came the first time to Japan in 1990. So it's been a few years. I think collectively, I believe I've been in Tokyo now 28 years. And I've reached escape velocity maybe a few times, but it always pulled me back. So, yeah, I think that's the basic introduction, I suppose. I was always riding mountain bikes, racing mountain bikes. I loved cycling. I had a friend that was here that was working in the cycling business, and he had offered me a kind of a part-time job to help him out. And I had just finished college and basically had some loans and not much money. And he kept telling me stories of the bubble experience in Japan and what it was like to live in Tokyo. And I got pretty excited. So I came over to work for him for about 6 months and had a great experience. And then after that, I went back to the US and sold all my personal belongings. And I bought a one-way ticket back to Tokyo.
And can you tell us, at least up until the beginning of the pandemic, what was Freewheeling doing? What's kind of the range of services that you're offering with your company?
Okay. Um, so like I said, I've been doing a lot of cycle touring. I've worked for quite a few different outfitters over the years, Intrepid Travel and Backroads Touring, and do like multi-day trips. But what I thought was missing in Japan, especially in Tokyo, was just a simple introduction to the city that you could do by bicycle. And I really kind of wanted to get away from doing the trips for a lot of cycling enthusiasts. And I wanted to act as more of a bridge for just everyday people that might be coming to the city, and they might not realize how amazing it is to see the city on bicycle, that it could be a safe option. And as you know, when you come here, people walk a lot. And some of my friends would come to visit, and after a day or two they'd be like, oh Brad, I need to go buy some jogging shoes, or I need some better footwear. I'm not going to survive these 2 weeks in Tokyo. And I'd say, well, hey, why don't we get some bicycles? I'll show you around the city in an afternoon, and then you can pick and choose the neighborhoods you like after that. So the bicycle tour business kind of grew organically through my experience with a lot of my friends that would travel and visit me while I lived here. And over time, I had this kind of a mix mashed collection of mamachari bicycles, little maybe single speed or 3 speed, and kind of the bikes you use with a basket and a fender. And I always had a couple extra bikes just in case. And then I thought, well, looks like the Olympics are going to be coming to Japan. This was 5 years ago, and tourism was definitely ramping up. And some of my friends were kind of getting into the tourism business more and more. And I thought, it's time to do this. I'm going to actually form a company and put some money into it, get some better bikes, and see where I could go with it.
And I've heard from people who have been on your tours and reviewed it that you're you're considered to be extremely knowledgeable about different parts of Tokyo when you're doing your tours. How did you come by, this information, and how did you kind of educate yourself about the city?
Wow. Well, I would say, first of all, knowing most of the back streets, just because I enjoy cycling so much and I really didn't want to take the train or the bus as much. I also enjoyed skateboarding. I do some skateboard tours, inline skating. So I would just kind of go out, maybe after work. I taught English for a while, and after my job, just to kind of get rid of the stress of the day, I'd go out and ride my bike for a couple hours and purposely get lost. And I would just end up in these new neighborhoods, and I would ask some people on the street, excuse me, how do I get back to Meguro? And they would look at me funny, like, you can't, it's too far. I'd be somewhere like Kichijoji or in another part of town, maybe 20 kilometers away. And they'd be like, oh, I have no idea how you get back there. So, and this is before the time of smartphones. And I can remember very clearly, I had this Tokyo English map, like the type that you would pick up at Narita Airport. And it had creases in it in the map. And every now and then I'd be cycling along like Kananadori or Kampachidori or some of these big roads, and I'd veer off and I'd leave sort of the crease area of the map where I couldn't read where I was. And it was kind of fun because it was like going off, over the wall or to the new zone. And I would have to figure out my way back. And so definitely learning the back streets that way, just by, searching them out and finding new neighborhoods, hanging out with locals that lived in those neighborhoods and asking them to take me around. That was the first part. I was fortunate to have a couple jobs where I was teaching English for the local municipal offices. I worked at the Minato Kuyakusho in Hamamatsucho. I worked for the Setagaya ward office. And they always, these local, communities, there's 23 wards within Tokyo. And each of these wards would produce an English newspaper. And usually it was released each month. And there would always be information in the newspaper about the festivals or about things that were happening, or where to pay your health insurance, or how to separate the trash. And, it was just kind of like a basic knowledge that was usually fairly helpful for foreigners. So I kind of collected these newspapers, and I had a big file of them, and I would keep them with me. And, and then when my friends would come to town, I'd be like, hey, you know what? This month, there's actually this really amazing festival happening on the 15th. Let's go check this out. And, so over time, after 20 years, naturally, I kind of seasonally knew which areas were interesting, and especially where the certain festivals were happening, and the different shopping districts. And, like there's always every shopping district has a holiday. And for example, in my neighborhood in Sasazuka, Wednesday is the holiday. The Sento's closed, the local public bath is closed, the yakitori shop isn't open. So, you know that on Wednesday, you probably don't want to take groups around my neighborhood. I'll go to the neighborhood next door, maybe to Hatagayo or Meidaimai, and it'll be very lively, totally different. So having that insight, basically I got a lot of the information from the local governments. And then secondary to that would have to be my Japanese friends. And I practiced a lot before I started offering the tours to people I didn't know. And I would collectively ask my friends to join me on the weekend. And I'd say, hey, come with me. I need to see if I'm doing this right. I don't want to, do it the wrong way or misrepresent myself. And so we go to the temple or we go to the shrine, and, my Japanese friends were very, very nice. They wanted to study English. So I promised I wouldn't speak Japanese to them, and they would join me for like a 4-hour tour, and we'd visit certain temples, and they would say, hey, you know, this temple is associated with the Shikoku Ohenro, which is the collection of 88 temples where they have a pilgrimage. And on certain holidays, you can actually do a miniature pilgrimage at this temple. And they bring sand from the island of Shikoku and they spread it around in the dungeon of this temple, and you can walk barefoot through it. And, you know, and just things like that that I would have absolutely no idea about, and would be pretty difficult to find that information. So I would say probably the bulk of my knowledge has come from word of mouth, and, you know, tapping into the locals, either the foreigners that have lived a long time in different neighborhoods, or specifically my Japanese friends.
Well, that's great. You know, it is true that our own, you know, even for long-term residents, our mental maps of most parts of Tokyo are based on where it stands from the local station, the train station. And so we know basically how to get from the station to the venue, but we
Yes.
don't necessarily know how the venues in one station area connect to another station area, because we don't usually walk it or ride that way.
Ride the
Um,
bike. Mhm.
so one other thing is, you know, this city, Tokyo, doesn't seem to be very, I don't know, built for bicycles. There aren't too many
Yeah.
bike lanes that I'm aware of. And, you
Right.
know, I know that people sometimes complain to me about old ladies on bikes bumping past them on the sidewalk, and, you know, seemingly carefree about who they hit.
Oh yeah,
So
it's a bit of a circus out there.
so how is it that you are able to make the city a little more bicycle friendly for your tours?
Good question. One of the ways, and I should be specific about this, is most of our tours are on the west side of Tokyo, and we pretty much operate outside the Yamanote Circle, which, as you know, the Yamanote Circle is kind of the center of, kind of the heart of Tokyo, basically, and where most of the businesses are, and the downtown areas, embassies and such. And in my experience, you don't need a guide to go to Harajuku, and you don't really need a guide to go to Tokyo Tower. Um, these are places that are very iconic, and you should see them if you've never been to Tokyo, but I don't really need to take you there. So a big theme of our tours is introducing the back streets and the local areas. And I really want to give a sense of how people are living and where people live that are inside the city. Now, that being said, we offer architecture tours and private experiences. And if somebody wants to see like the new Olympic Stadium, or they want to go to the fish market by bicycle, no problem. We can arrange it. But that's not what we're known for. And a lot of times I'll recommend, you know, I'll tell people, I say, you know, you might just enjoy walking. It's going to be nicer. You don't have, there's really hard to park the bike in downtown Shibuya. And if you park it somewhere you're not supposed to, it's going to get picked up and the police are going to take it away. And, you know, it might be a hassle. So for our tours, we operate a lot of the time on the west side, basically from Shinjuku to, say, Shinagawa area, everything outside the Yamanote line from that zone, which is probably a 20-kilometer area, which is pretty big. And you know, we're taking people on back streets and riverside pathways that are designated for walking and cycling. When I have family groups, people that want to come with, say, children under 12 years old, we have a great route where we take a group out to on the Kanda River, and there's a cycling path. I can access it from our location in about 2 kilometers, and we can be on that cycling path all day long with no cars. So there are a few places like that if you know where to look. Um, that tour, we go to Inokashira Koen and we visit the Ghibli Museum, which is from the famous animator Hayao Miyazaki. And that's a big request if I'm able to secure tickets for the museum, which sometimes can be a challenge. And we get those, and then we take the group out there, we have an experience, and then we come back. Also, one of the things that makes the cycling and walking very accessible is Tokyo is a city there are so many rivers that you never really see. And what's happened over time is the water flows underground, and a lot of times the river is actually paved over. So you wouldn't know the river's there, but the water's still flowing. And that river path has beautiful cherry trees, and often they connect to other river paths. So if I pass through, say, from my neighborhood to Shimokitazawa, and then I want to connect to the Meguro River, which flows all the way from Hanagi Park or Umegaoka, I can take that river all the way into Nakameguro. And then all of a sudden, you're next to this larger river, and there's actually a bike and walking path next to it. So over time, we've been able to sort of connect these pathways. And most of these are from the Edo period, and they were canals that were built for agricultural reasons and for flood control. And there's a lot of interesting places like this. Some of them connect to the Tamagawa River, others go into Tokyo Bay. If you go up north, you can get to the Arakawa River, and there's a lot of different tributaries that run off of that. So I haven't gone as far as considering writing a book, but I certainly have enough material. And it's been on my mind during this COVID-19 time, when I'm not actually doing so many tours for guests, how to maybe get people excited about the future, or produce something that people can use on their own more. So we'll see.
Okay, well, finally, if you've really kind of excited some people who are watching this video, how should they get in touch with you or learn more about your company to move to the next step?
Sure. Well, our company name is Freewheeling, pretty easy. And our website is freewheeling.jp. So you can access us through the website. We have videos on the website that show our rides. We've been fortunate to be featured on CNN, and we have those videos on there, and people can get a sense of what the ride's like. One of the first questions people ask us is it safe? And I say, yes, I believe it is. I believe we can offer a tour where you can feel very comfortable. Personally, I wouldn't ride a bike in Paris or London or New York City. I wouldn't recommend it. I have gone on an amazing bike tour in Bangkok, which you think would just be frenetic and not safe. But if you're with the right guide and you're on back streets, it's amazing. And you don't even notice all the traffic. So definitely through the website is our premier way. That would be the easiest. We can accept direct messages or inquiries. We're offering tours every day of the year. I have another partner specifically that we do the tours with. Occasionally we'll have a bigger group, and we do have some staff that can help out, work as a tail guide or an extra guide if we need. But we're a small operation. We're basically a boutique tour guides where there's just two of us, and the maximum number that we take on a ride is 4 people. And we're pretty strict about that. Unless it's a private group, any of our shared tours, the maximum number is 4. and we feel pretty strongly about that. I think up to date, we've taken more than 2,000 people cycling in the last 5 years, and we've never had an injury, knock on wood.
All right, well, that's great. So I want to thank you quite a bit, Brad, for joining us today. And I hope that our viewers also enjoy what we had today. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate it. Look forward to anybody that might want to go freewheeling. Come see us in Tokyo when the time is right.